for doing this. I'll let you choose your own adventure. More certainty in your eyes, the path for Matt Eberflus or the path for Justin Fields moving forward with the Bears?
Believe it or not, Judson, I think that the path to me at this moment in a fluid situation, I always have to give that disclaimer because
Sure.
tomorrow this opinion could change. But
Right.
I have been pretty steadfast that the path is a little bit more clear for Matt Eberflus in that my best guess is that he does come back with the Bears. And I think that the reason I think that there's two big reasons. I mean, we can go into all sorts of minutia, but what he has done with the defense since Alan Williams was fired, I think has been a huge thing for him. That there has been noticeable improvement even before Montez Sweat came to the Bears. So I think that's one thing in terms of his actual coaching. The other thing is that in the times that we as a collective media have talked to Ryan Poles, he too seems to genuinely like Matt Eberflus as their head coach. Not just as a dude. Of course, he loves him as a guy and all that. They came in together, same agents and all of that. But when the bleep was hitting the fan earlier this year, he could not have given a more genuine endorsement of the head coach. And I've heard what I have felt were disingenuous thumbs up for coaches in the past and all of our Chicago sports teams. This one feels genuine, and I do think that they also take into account the fact that last year was a wash because they traded people, they planned to lose, all of that. So I don't think that they evaluate him on that. As for Justin Fields, yeah, I don't have a good feeling that he is going to be back next year. I just think that there has not been the discernible jump in his play. He's gotten better. Justin
Sure.
Fields is a better player this year. He doesn't just take off as much as he used to. He uses his legs to find open receivers as opposed to just taking off. Rhythm and timing is better. Still struggling to get rid of the ball quickly, but there just hasn't been that jump that you could say, yeah, we project this guy to be $200 million worth. So at this point, I don't feel good about Justin Fields coming back.
So, in that train of thought, there doesn't seem to be a connection between a change at quarterback with Justin Fields and then also a change at head coach. If you were to want an offensive-minded head coach to go with potentially your young, new drafted quarterback.
Yeah, I mean that's such a great question. I think that if nothing else at all, not like I don't have a great feel for what they think about Luke Getsy, their offensive coordinator. It seems like most people are down on him, but I've not heard that through the voices of anybody in Bears brass at this point. I think that if Matt Eberflus does keep his job, my guess would be that they do replace the offensive coordinator and they bring in a series and everybody on that offensive staff for that matter, whether it's fair or not. Andrew, the quarterback's coach who I've talked to many times, seems like a knowledgeable guy, but I think you probably scrap the entire offensive coaching staff and just straight up bring in some guys that are experienced, that have done it before, who understand how to develop a quarterback, whether it's Justin Fields or one of the drafted quarterbacks, somebody who has a track record. I don't think that this is one of those years where if you do away with people, you can't take chances on the next guy. No more of this, we're going to take a chance on a first-time head coach, a first-time offensive coordinator. But the offensive staff has to be real, and it has to be credible, and it has to be a group that has done it before and can do it again.
Has Justin Fields showed signs that he thinks it's over, or is just somewhat kind of trying to enjoy whatever you want to call it until his days are up with the Chicago Bears?
I don't think so. Some of my colleagues when I say colleagues, other reporters at Hallis Hall have, read into some of the things that he has said. He did an interview recently with Caitlin Sharkey of WGN-TV,
right,
where he talked about, where he was asked about what his time meant here and what he thinks of the fans. So it was the line of questioning led him in the direction of being reflective, but I'm not reading into that. I've kicked this around on the score. Does he know his fate at this point? I don't think he does. I don't think that Justin Fields knows his fate at this point. I got to believe that Ryan Poles has a pretty good idea of it. But to me, just to answer your question directly, I don't think that Justin Fields has given a sign or a tell yet in terms of whether or not he's going to be back. He's such a calm talker, and he doesn't use a lot of words when he answers our questions. He doesn't show a lot of emotions either way, unless you're accusing him of selling out his coaches and throwing them under the bus, which he was somewhat accused of earlier in the year. So I think everything is still on the table in terms of what he thinks about this, or I do believe he'd probably be speaking differently.
The greatest asset or greatest skill set that Justin Fields has, if you were to make the case, or you were to make the case of why the Bears would decide to keep him, what would it be?
I mean, I think the fact that he's such a great athlete, and that if you use that correctly, like, it's funny how I used to use the terminology run shaming, that we do that to quarterbacks who are good runners. Like last
Sure.
year, it was such a revelation. I don't know if revelation is the right word, but the record breaking year he had in single game and for the full season was just a blast to watch. And I'm complicit in this. We all were like, oh, that's great, but what about throwing the ball? So I think that and like even in this game last week where he throws for about 160 yards, had nearly 100 yards rushing, and we really don't make too big a deal of that. But that is such a huge weapon in this day and age of the NFL. It messes with the heads of opposing teams' defensive coordinators. I think with the coordinators I've talked to, that they can't stand having to game plan for mobile quarterbacks because there's going to be some vulnerabilities because of that, and using an extra spy. So I still think it's that. If you want to talk about like with the throwing, like this guy, like Justin Fields, and we don't talk about this enough, the guy has a cannon for an arm and does make some pretty incredible throws. And their timing is off at times, rhythm, the whole thing. I get that. But watching his arm talent is fun, and it would be great to see for whether it's with the Bears or somebody else, somebody get the most out of that.
Yeah, to me, Justin Fields, he's a very natural thrower. I don't know if he's a natural passer, meaning footwork and everything tied in together, right? Like, yeah. I'd love to see him on the mound. I'd love to see him go deep in the hole, to get a ground ball and fire it over to first base. I think it'd probably come in about 95 miles per hour. But being a passer,
accuracy though, Justin, he's going to airmail that ball over the first baseman's head.
Right. Yeah. Right. No, you're right. With the footwork tied with the arm talent as well, thrower versus passer. So that leads me to another question. On the flip side of why you would keep him, where would you begin with the number one reason why the Bears may turn the page on Justin Fields?
I think it's, the numbers are replaceable. The numbers that he has put up, averaging, about, I don't have it right in front of me, but about like over the last 2 years, about 165 to 170 yards per game. I think he's rushing for 50 now, with a little down this year with the running. It averages out to about 50 or 60 yards per game. And I know that you can't always just look at numbers, but as you know, I have watched every single game up close that Justin Fields has played. And I do think that those numbers are pretty indicative of the way that he has played. So I'll start there, that you can replace that. Then I have a hard time, Judson, getting past the fourth quarters. I just do. With it, he just it's been a rough percentage for him in the fourth quarter. There's been a lot of fumbles. Again last week against Arizona, it was like such a microcosm of Fields. He runs for 38 yards to get them in position for the touchdown, and then he flings the ball into the end zone and he's intercepted. Bad interception in the end zone. And I know you always got to give credit to the other team and all of that, but there's just been too much of that. Can this guy win you games in the fourth quarter? And look, I'm not saying like you have to be Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or these guys that you just assume if they have the ball with 3 minutes left, they're going to march the ball down the field. You don't have to be like that, but there's just been too many opportunities for Justin Fields in the fourth quarter where he has not gotten it done. So that part scares me, and that's where you move on from Justin Fields.
How much will Ryan Poles take into account how his teammates feel about him, if at all? Should it matter?
I think Ryan Poles, of the GMs that I have covered with the Chicago Bears, he's about as emotional and player concerned as I've ever seen. Like he really does And I think that's part of like being a young general
Right.
manager in this league. A guy who is not that far from being removed as a player. Like I think he still relates to the player, and still these conversations are hard for him. And he's even admitted, like to recently, I think it was on the Bears radio network this past week, where he was saying, "Look, you have to separate the emotions from when we watch these games, the way you watch it, the way I watch it, the way Bears fans watch it. He's doing the same stuff. He's pounding the table. He's like throwing his arms up." But he even said, "Look, we've all had those emotional moments, and you have to step away from it." Look, I'll give you one example though, where while he does keep the player in mind, last year he traded Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn, two of the most popular guys in that locker room. And guess what? That locker room was not happy. They were not happy. I can tell you from being in that locker room, they were not pleased with what Ryan Poles did, and it left a lot of players doing this, throwing their arms up and saying, what's going on here? So I do think at the end of the day, while Poles is thoughtful, there is a history of him making shrewd moves, which doesn't take the other players' emotions into account.
To broaden it out a little bit, not talk about Justin Fields, although it is a pretty fascinating topic. Where will the Bears begin also to get this team where they want to go, free agent wise, draft, your top 3, 4, 5 areas of needs besides a quarterback position?
Yeah. I mean, I would love it. I would love it if the Bears could bring in another defensive end to pair up with Montez Sweat. They've had a lot of other guys opposite of Sweat this year, or the combinations even before Sweat, and that they've all been fine. But if you were to get somebody, I'm not saying you have to get another absolute dominator, but somebody can get double-digit sacks in a year, I think that that's a place to start. I also still think that defensively, and I'll get to the offense as well, I don't know how they go about 3 technique. Most of the people that I've talked to are not sold on Gervon Dexter, one of the draft picks, a rookie this year who has gotten better as the year has gone on. But if they are going to continue to run this defense, which I assume they will because they have drafted and acquired the players necessary for a 4-3, you got to have that Mauler 3 technique. So I still think that that's something that you got to find, whether in free agency or in the draft. Then on the offensive side of the ball, you got to get somebody to go with DJ Moore. DJ Moore is their top receiver. Cole Kmet is the second leading receiver. And God bless Cole Kmet. And maybe he continues to head to some sort of level of stardom. Cole Kmet is not a star, but maybe he is heading in that direction. There has not been that guy opposite of DJ Moore this year. Unfortunately, Darnell Mooney, I don't know, for whatever reason, that has not worked out. Velus Jones Jr. has not worked out for the Bears this year. Tyler Scott, the rookie, is not there yet. I don't know if you just go into the season thinking that he's going to develop. So definitely, wide receiver. And then I think that the last real position of need on the offense is the center position. Lucas Patrick has been here. It just hasn't been good enough. So I think that that's the tweak you need there. And then you better, you got to think about left tackle too. And do you believe that Braxton Jones is that guy going forward?
New Year resolutions for Mark Grote? What do you have for me for 2024?
Oh, man. Okay. I haven't really thought about my New Year's resolution.
Oh, come on. What is it? What are we looking at? 28th here?
Yeah, that's
time
true.
To buckle down.
Hey, you know how I work, man. I'm
yeah, I do. Now I do.
Yeah.
Right.
my brain's always a little bit scrambled. I don't know. I suppose I could go with the cliche thing. I do have some weight that I need to lose. I want to get back down to my boxing weight, which was right around 180 or so. So yeah, that's where I'd like to. I'm just going to go with the weight thing here, if that's all right, Judson. I'm sorry for the completely unoriginal and awful answer, but that's
Were you a professional boxer at some point?
I wasn't,
that I need to know about? Okay. Right. Or an amateur boxer?
Yeah, no, I have never boxed anybody in my life. So
okay.
I think.
Well, listen, boxing may be a good way to get in shape.
Yeah, that's true. Or I'll say this, Judson. I'll let you in on the personal life a little bit.
I'd like that.
Yeah. So I had lived in the city of Chicago for about 16, 17 years. I was living there. I just made the move to Oak Park, and I have a nice new place, and I love it, and all that kind of stuff. It's bigger because that's what happens when you move out of the city. You get a bigger place just
Right.
because it's the city. I have not adjusted well. I don't like not living in the city of Chicago. So one of my resolutions will be to really go out of my way to learn my new city and to get used to not living in the city of Chicago.
Biggest issues of being out of the city?
You
It's
know what
let
it
me
is?
guess
Yeah.
because I think I heard you say it on air, but it's proximity. In a previous life when I used to live in Pacific Beach in San Diego, I had a grocery store maybe 38 yards from my front door. Right, they had a Pete's Coffee as soon as you walk in, and
Yes.
so that's what the missus and I would do. We'd roll out of bed, and then we'd be back on the couch with maybe 4 minutes, and didn't have to get in a car or do anything. So it's that kind of stuff, isn't
It's
it?
that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Like Judson, I had a Starbucks. I'm a Starbucks snob. Like if I'm going out for coffee, it's Starbucks. I've tried everything. I had a Starbucks across the street. Across the street from the Starbucks, there was a 7-Eleven. Down the block from the 7-Eleven, there's a Target. Player, please. There's a Walgreens. There's a Whole Foods. Uh,
Right.
there's a Bachwinkels. There's all that. And then there was this lake about 50 yards away from where I was living, too.
For a swim?
Yeah, I could go for a swim. I could go for a
Sure.
leisurely walk. And then there was the fact that I could walk to work. What's all this parking garage stuff that I'm dealing with now? So yeah, it's an adjustment for sure, but it's one that I resolve. It's one I resolve to make.
Well, suburb life for the coffee, it's called a K cup.
Oh
Put it in
yeah,
Keurig,
yeah,
right? You don't
yeah,
go anywhere. You
yeah.
just you just stay home more.
Yeah. No, no,
That's
I
really
do.
what it is.
I have
Yeah.
anyway, and I do make a pot of coffee. I have the K cup. I also have a cat Dave the cat, who likes it when I spend coffee time with him. So that makes it a little bit more rewarding. So, but
And Dave's adjusted well to the burbs, or does he also miss the
he
city?
also misses the old. This is ironic. Well, maybe it's not ironic because cats like smaller spaces. As I was talking about living in a smaller place, I lived in what they call a convertible studio in a high rise back in
Right.
the place. And Dave the cat, who's sitting over, taking a nap right now over the left of me, he loved that smaller place. When he got here to this place, which is vastly larger, he hid literally for the first 3 days. He's like, "What are we doing?" And once he realized, yo, this is for real, and then he took ownership, and now I think he's comfortable with
Well, you also can't say yo when you live in the burbs. But so
it.
that's something else you're going to have to drop.
Or
But
as a
Grote,
middle-aged
right.
man, I probably shouldn't be saying yo either.
No, if you lived in the city, you could. Yeah, you
That's
could.
true.
But that's
True.
why I don't say it.
Hey,
It's
what's
because
your?
of the
You got
suburbs.
one? You got a New Year's resolution?
Wow, that's a good one.
See, you don't know
Wow.
either. You don't
No,
know
I
either.
probably no, I probably should have been thinking of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It would probably do with the finances, so I won't bore you there.
Okay.
Make more money. How about that?
We work at the same company. I totally get
Right.
it.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Grody, I appreciate you. This is a fascinating storyline.
Oh yeah.
Um, I really love the Justin Fields supporters. I don't necessarily agree with them, but I think it's great that there's so many people that have Justin Fields back, right? Because there is so much context, including Matt Nagy, but there is so much context
Yeah.
to go along with him. I don't expect him to be back, but if he is, he's going to be very, very easy to root for moving forward. So we'll just have to wait and see, man. Thanks so much for your time, Mark.
You got it, Judson. My pleasure.